The sound of shattering glass hit the floor before I even understood what happened. My mother-in-law had swept her arm across my desk and sent my entire dual-monitor setup crashing onto the hardwood. "You sit in this room all day pretending to work while my son kills himself at that firm," she said, her voice steady, almost rehearsed, like she'd been practicing that line in the mirror. "A wife cooks. A wife cleans. A wife doesn't hide behind a screen." She was standing in my office doorway with her arms crossed, wearing the same smug expression she'd worn since the day she moved in. "My name is Marlowe Kinney, I'm 29. And the equipment she just destroyed was worth $14,000. But the client call she just interrupted? That was worth $250,000. Let me go back. I married Graham Kinney 2 years ago in a small courthouse ceremony because neither of us wanted the fuss. He was charming in the way that sneaks up on you. Quiet confidence, a hand on the small of your back, the kind of man who remembers how you take your coffee. His mother, Judith, flew in from Phoenix for the wedding. She was supposed to stay a week. That was 26 months ago. At first I understood. Judith had just gone through a rough divorce. Graham's father had left her for a woman he met at a golf resort in Scottsdale, and Judith was rattled. She needed somewhere soft to land, and Graham was her only child. "Just until she gets back on her feet," he told me, squeezing my hand in bed that first night she slept in our guest room. I believed him because I loved him, and because I thought kindness was something you could afford indefinitely. Was wrong. Within 3 weeks, Judith had rearranged my kitchen. Not moved a few things around, rearranged. New shelf liners, labels on the spice rack, a passive-aggressive sticky note on the inside of the pantry door that read, "Flour goes on the left, Marlowe." She reorganized the linen closet. She swapped out my bath towels for ones she ordered off Amazon because mine felt like sandpaper. She started meal prepping on Sundays without asking me, filling the fridge with containers labeled with Graham's name only. Not Graham and Marlowe. Just Graham. Tuesday lunch, Graham Thursday dinner. Like I didn't live there, like I didn't eat. Graham said I was overthinking it. "She's just trying to help, Marlowe. She's lonely. Give her time." So I gave her time, I gave her months. I gave her the entire first year of my marriage, and in return she gave me a running commentary on everything I did wrong. The way I loaded the dishwasher. The way I didn't iron Graham's shirts. The way I spent all day in that little room instead of being present. That little room was my office. And what I did inside it was something Judith never bothered to understand. I'm a UX designer, or I was, before I went independent. 4 years ago, before I even met Graham, I started freelancing on the side while working full-time at an agency in Denver. I was good at it. Good enough that clients started asking for me by name. Good enough that I eventually quit the agency and went solo. By the time Graham and I got married, I was pulling in 6 figures from my home office. Not tech bro money, but real, consistent, growing revenue. I had 12 retainer clients, 2 subcontractors, and a waiting list. Judith didn't know any of this. She saw me sitting at a computer and assumed I was browsing Pinterest. She saw me on video calls and assumed I was gossiping with friends. She once walked in during a client presentation, looked at the screen, and said, "Oh, are you redecorating someone's website? That's a cute little hobby." Then she asked if I could come help her fold laundry when I was done playing. I told Graham. He winced, but he didn't correct her. "She wouldn't understand what you do," he said. "It's easier to just let it go." Let it go. His solution for everything. Let it go when she critiqued my body at Thanksgiving. Let it go when she told his cousin I didn't work. Let it go when she signed me up for a cooking class as a gift and presented it in front of his entire family, beaming like she'd done me a favor. I let it all go, piece by piece, until I couldn't feel my hands from gripping my own patience so tightly. The monitors were the breaking point. It was a Tuesday. I had a final review call with a client who had been developing a healthcare app, one of my biggest contracts. I'd been working on their redesign for 5 months. The call was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, I was setting up my presentation, adjusting my camera, checking my slides. Judith knocked once, didn't wait for an answer, and walked in carrying a vacuum cleaner. "I'm vacuuming this floor," she announced. "It's filthy. Judith, I have a call in 15 minutes. Can you do it later?" Later, later, always later. If you kept this house clean in the first place, I wouldn't have to do everything myself. I hired a cleaning service. They come every Thursday. A cleaning service. She said it like I'd told her I hired a clown. A real wife doesn't pay strangers to clean her home. I took a breath. "Judith, please." 15 minutes. She plugged in the vacuum and turned it on. I stood up, walked over, and unplugged it. Calmly. No yelling. I looked at her and said, "Not right now." Her face changed. Something shifted behind her eyes. The same look she got when Graham's father used to push back on her. I'd heard the stories. I recognized the switch. She grabbed the cord from my hand and yanked it. Then she turned toward my desk and in one furious sweep, knocked both monitors off the surface. The first one hit the floor screen down. The second bounced off the edge and cracked against the wall. My webcam snapped off its mount. My ring light toppled. Coffee spilled across my keyboard. For about 3 seconds I couldn't move. Then she said that line. "You sit in this room all day pretending to work while my son kills himself at that firm." I didn't yell, I didn't touch her. I walked past her, opened the office door wider, and said 4 words, "Get out of my house." She laughed. "Your house? This is my son's house." "No, it's mine. My name is on the deed. My money paid the down payment. My income covers the mortgage. And right now you are trespassing in my office and you have just destroyed my property." Her expression flickered, just for a second, like a screen glitching. Then it reset to that default smugness. "Graham will hear about this." "Good." She walked out of the room. I closed the door, sat down on the floor next to my broken monitors, and called my client from my phone. I apologized for the camera situation. I gave the presentation audio only, narrating the slides from my tablet. They approved the final design. $240,000, secured from the floor of my wrecked office, with coffee soaking into my socks. When Graham came home that evening, Judith was already crying at the kitchen table. I could hear her from upstairs. She screamed at me, "Graham. She told me to get out. She said this wasn't my home. After everything I've done for you two." I came downstairs. Graham looked at me like I'd committed a crime. "Marlowe, what happened?" "She destroyed my office equipment. 2 monitors, a webcam, a ring light, and a keyboard. During a client call, she said it was an accident." An accident? I almost smiled. "She walked into my office uninvited, turned on a vacuum cleaner to drown out my work, and when I unplugged it, she swept everything off my desk. That's not an accident, that's sabotage." Judith sniffled louder. "I was trying to clean. She's always so defensive about that room." Graham ran his hand through his hair. "Marlowe, she's my mother. Can you just what?" I said quietly. "Let it go?" He closed his mouth. "Graham, I need you to understand something." I pulled out my phone and opened my invoicing app. I turned the screen toward him. "This is what I made last month, and the month before that, and the month before that." His eyes moved across the numbers. I watched them widen. He knew I worked from home. He knew I did design stuff. But I'd never shown him the actual figures because, honestly, he'd never asked. He deposited his salary into our joint account and assumed his was the bigger contribution. He'd never questioned it because Judith had spent 2 years reinforcing the idea that I didn't really work. "That's," he started. "More than you," I finished. "By a significant margin, every month." Judith looked at the screen from across the table. "Numbers on a phone don't mean anything. Anyone can fake that." "You're right," I said. "So let me show you something you can't fake." I walked to the filing cabinet in the hallway, the one Judith had once tried to reorganize before I put a lock on it, and pulled out a folder. Inside was the deed to the house. My name, only my name. I'd bought it before we married, with earnings from my business. Graham was not on the title. He never had been. I set it on the table. "This house belongs to me, not to Graham, not to you, to me, the woman who sits in that little room." Graham stared at the deed like it was written in a language he didn't speak. "You never put my name on the house? You never asked, and you never contributed to the mortgage. Your salary covers your car, your golf membership, and the joint account for groceries. My income covers everything else: the mortgage, insurance, property taxes, utilities. The cleaning service that Judith thinks is shameful." Silence settled over the kitchen like fog. Judith broke it first. "This is exactly what I warned you about, Graham. A woman who keeps secrets from her husband. A woman who hoards money. You need to get a lawyer." I looked at her. "Actually, Judith, I already have one." I reached into the same folder and pulled out a second document. A formal demand letter, drafted by my attorney 3 weeks earlier, after the last incident, when Judith had gone into my office, opened my laptop, and deleted what she thought was a video game, but was actually a project management dashboard. I'd recovered the data, but I'd also started preparing. The letter outlined property damage, harassment, and a formal request for Judith to vacate the premises within 30 days. I had this drawn up after you deleted my files last month, I said. I was going to sit down with both of you and discuss it civilly. But after today, I don't think 30 days is necessary. Graham looked at the letter, then at his mother, then at me. You went to a lawyer? Behind my back. You let your mother destroy my livelihood behind my face. Which is worse? He didn't answer. Judith stood up, trembling. You ungrateful girl. I gave up my life to come here and take care of this family. No one asked you to, I said. And I'm not a girl, I'm the homeowner. Graham's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and stepped into the living room. I could hear his voice drop to a murmur. When he came back, his face had changed, something between guilt and panic. That was Rick, he said. Rick was his colleague at the investment firm where Graham worked as a junior portfolio manager. He said, Marlowe, did you talk to anyone at my office? No. Why would I? Because someone from your client list contacted our compliance department. They said there was a conflict of interest. My stomach tightened. What conflict of interest? Graham sat down slowly. He wouldn't look at me. 8 months ago, my firm took on a new client, a healthcare startup. They were looking for investment partners to fund their expansion. I felt the blood drain from my face. Which healthcare startup? He said the name. Meridian Health, my client. The app redesign I had just finalized that afternoon, on the floor of my destroyed office with coffee in my socks. Your firm is investing in my client, I said, each word landing like a stone. I didn't know they were your client when we took them on, he said quickly. But once I found out, I thought it could be an advantage. I flagged it internally as a personal connection. My manager approved it. It's not illegal. Did you disclose that your wife is the lead designer on their product? Silence. Graham. Did you disclose that? Not exactly. I repeated it the way you repeat something that's about to change your life. You told your firm you had a personal connection to Meridian Health, but you didn't tell them your wife is their primary contractor. You leveraged my client relationship to advance your career without my knowledge. And without telling your firm the full truth. I didn't. That's a compliance violation, Graham. Judith waved her hand. Oh, stop being dramatic. He was helping the family. He was helping himself, I said. Using me. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been too polite to do for 2 years. I called my client directly, not to report Graham, not yet. To ask a simple question, had they been contacted by an investment firm and had anyone there mentioned my name? They had. Graham's manager had used my design work, my case studies, my prototypes, my UX research, in their pitch materials to Meridian's board. Screenshots of my designs were in their investment deck. My work presented as evidence of the product's viability to justify a 7-figure investment. Without my permission, without my knowledge, without crediting me. I hung up the phone and looked at Graham. You used my work. The firm used it. Not me personally. Your firm, which you directed to my client, used my proprietary work product in their pitch without my consent. That's intellectual property theft, Graham. And it's a breach of the NDA your firm signed with Meridian. His face went white. Genuinely white, like paper. Judith, who didn't understand a word of what was happening but could feel the power shifting, tried one more time. Marlowe, you're blowing this out of proportion. Family helps family. Judith, I said calmly, I need you to go pack your things. Tonight. I will not. This is my house. You have damaged my property, disrupted my business, and you are not on the lease, the deed, or any document that gives you the right to be here. If you are not packed by morning, my attorney will file for a formal eviction. I won't ask again. She looked at Graham. He said nothing. For the first time in 2 years, he had no let it go left to give. Judith went upstairs. Graham and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the deed still lying between us like a border. What are you going to do? He asked quietly. I'm going to file a formal IP complaint with Meridian's legal team. I'm going to send the pitch deck screenshots to my attorney. And I'm going to request a full audit of your firm's use of my materials. That could end my career. You should have thought about that before you used mine as a stepping stone. He looked at me with something I'd never seen from him before. Not anger, not sadness, but recognition. Like he was finally seeing who I was and realizing he'd never looked. I didn't think you'd do this, he whispered. I didn't think you'd give me a reason to. The next morning, Judith left. She didn't say goodbye. She carried 2 suitcases to the Uber I ordered for her and sat in the back seat staring straight ahead, like a woman being evacuated from a country she'd tried to colonize. Graham stayed. For a while. He slept in the guest room, the one Judith had turned into her personal suite, and we moved through the house like two strangers sharing an elevator. Polite, distant, careful not to touch. I filed the IP complaint. Meridian's legal team launched a review. Graham's firm was forced to disclose the full scope of their use of my materials, and when they did, it wasn't pretty. My designs had appeared in 3 separate investor presentations, none of which had my authorization. Graham's manager claimed ignorance, but the email trail told a different story. Graham had forwarded my project files from our shared home network. His firm placed him on leave. Not fired, not yet, but the kind of leave that everyone understands is a slow goodbye. No desk, no access, no projects. Just a salary dripping into the joint account like a leaking faucet. 2 weeks later, Graham came to me with a proposal. He wanted to work things out. He wanted couples counseling. He wanted to start fresh. "I love you, Marlowe," he said. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this." I thought about that for a long time, not because I was considering it, but because I wanted to be sure of my answer. "Graham," I said, "you didn't mess up. You made a choice. You chose to let your mother disrespect me every single day for 2 years, and instead of standing up for me, you told me to let it go. Then you found out what I was actually worth, not as your wife, but as a business, and you used it. You didn't protect me. You extracted from me." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't finished. "When your mother broke my monitors, you asked me what happened, but you looked at her first. When I showed you my income, you didn't say you were proud of me, you looked scared. When I told you about the IP violation, your first thought wasn't, 'I'm sorry.' It was that could end my career. Every single time, Graham, you chose yourself, and I finally realized I should do the same." I filed for divorce the following Monday. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, which means assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. My attorney made the case clearly. The house was mine before marriage, purchased with premarital income, never commingled. My business was mine, sole proprietor, no joint investment, no contribution from Graham. His salary had gone to his own expenses and a joint grocery account. The math was clean. Graham didn't fight it. I think by the end he was too embarrassed to. His firm had quietly terminated him during the proceedings, and the Meridian IP case had settled, in my favor. I received a formal apology, an additional contract, and a referral to 3 new clients from their network. My revenue doubled in 6 months. The last time I saw Graham was the day he came to collect his golf clubs from the garage. He stood in the driveway holding a 9-iron and looked up at the house, my house, like he was trying to memorize it. "I really thought we'd grow old here," he said. "So did I said. "But you let your mother move in and growth stopped." He put the clubs in his trunk and drove away. I went back inside, sat down at my new desk. Dual monitors, fresh keyboard, ring light mounted on a steel arm that Judith would never touch, and opened my inbox. 14 new messages, 3 client inquiries. One from Meridian asking if I'd consider a full-time creative director role. One from an industry magazine requesting an interview about my UX methodology. I leaned back in my chair and looked around my office. Clean, quiet, mine. She wanted me in the kitchen. I built a career from the room she called worthless, and now, the only person sitting at this table is me, and I'm not folding anyone's laundry.